there was a lot of hype around this film. Like I said, like people in the genre space really enjoyed it. And they're probably not really enjoying the fact that I didn't like it as much and thought that it could have been done better. What
Because, the whole world revolves around Chris, that if he doesn't like something, everybody else is going to be sitting in the corner being like, oh man, why doesn't he like what I like? I'm starting to think you're picking movies just so you can listen to me butchering some names. Because we're talking movies, we're talking Sisu, starring Jorma Turmila, Axel Henny, and Willamosa Willamo. Written and directed by Jalmari Helander. So, they have a crate full of alcohol and a truck full of women. I think they can figure something out. I know I could.
Bring the bitches.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of We're Butchering Your Name if it's not from Canada or North America. We're going to be talking about 2022 Grindhouse Finnish feature, Sisu. Scott, take us away.
All right, so the synopsis on this one is pretty simple. It's Nazi killer, qu'est-ce que c'est? Don't fuck with his gold.
I think that's the title of this episode now.
You like it, eh?
I do. I like when I don't have to do all the creative heavy lifting. So
yeah, it was like when we were talking about our 2023 episode. If you haven't listened to it, go back. I mentioned this in my honorable mentions. It's a fun little movie, but it's also a movie that it's perfect for the background, right? Like you're not really sitting into it for anything, but it's perfectly well done, and you can like sit down at any point and just fucking enjoy the shit out of this movie, because there's nothing better than just watching some fucking Nazis just getting ripped apart constantly.
anything else? Is that it? Like,
oh, I thought you were gonna jump in.
Well, I'm going to try and let you talk. I mean, co-host means that you're supposed to do some hosting. So
yeah, I know that's 30 seconds. That should be my allotted time for credit.
Scott has met his threshold for this week's show. So
yeah, no, it was like, well, because I talked about it in the 2023 episode too, right? So I already kind of said my piece on it. But you've never seen it, and you wanted to watch it off of my amazing recommendation. So I'm more interested in what you thought of just another kind of John Wick style fuck you up, and it's just fucking nonstop action.
So first off, I want to clarify, it was not Scott's recommendation. I would never take Scott's recommendation. It was actually our guest from our 2023 episode, Anel Dalgani, otherwise known as Sarah, who's actually just taken over a job at Coven, the sales development and finance production company out of France with offices in LA. It was her recommendation. This is actually why I watched it, not Scott's. I don't want to get the audience confused. What did I think? So I actually went into this with some high expectations, and let me clarify, by high expectations, I'm not like this is going to be an Oscar winning piece of cinematic history, but I like a good grindhouse. I mean, I love Quentin Tarantino's Don't Forget to Drink, Death Proof, and it's basically his version of that genre of cinema. I felt highly disappointed in this film. I felt that like the Nazis just getting killed, that's great. I felt that it lagged. It's only 90 minutes long. It's 91 minutes long, and at points it felt long. I was like, I don't understand how a action film feels this boring at points. It's almost like he didn't know how because the director Jalmari is the writer and director. It's like he didn't know how to. He's got some good set pieces, but it seems like he didn't know how to tie the set pieces together and create any type of tension. So it's sort of like you're watching like an action piece, then there's like dead air, and then there's action piece, and you got to weave those together better. Yeah, that's like one of my big. Well, I have some other criticisms, but that's like the big one. I actually got bored watching this film. Yeah, Scott, why don't you kind of just talk back on that a bit? Because I think your point about being hold on. I think your point about being able to be in the background is so valid. Like you can just essentially jump in, other than the gold, like the inciting incident, the catalyst. After you see that, you could be doing dishes, turn around, and it's just like Nazis getting killed. Yep, okay. Nazis getting killed. Like you don't need the story. The story is almost irrelevant. Anyway, go ahead.
Right. Well, and that's what I'm saying. Like in terms, I think this is more of a cinematic film, right? It's not like in terms of you're just there for the visuals. You're not there for the story, because yeah, a lot of stuff that it's supposed to push this thing together easily falls apart. Because if you think about it, like these Nazis are the worst fucking Nazis ever, because they can't.
So first off, like, Nazis are bad. Just to clarify for everybody, Scott, it means Nazis are bad. These are just not good soldiers.
Yes, like they are the worst. Like these are like, if you had like an end credit scene and like these people got frozen and they got woken up later on, and you find out they're the genetic material of the stormtroopers, it would make fucking sense. Because you know, in a fucking tank with a guy going straight ahead of you, and you can't fucking like kill him with a shell. You can't shoot him with the fucking machine gun or whatever, the Tarek gun that's on there, when literally 30 seconds before that, when he used one of your buddy like co-soldiers as a body shield, and you're nailing that fucking body shield with accurate precision, and then once he dropped it, you couldn't hit him again.
It's almost like you were better at shooting your own guys.
You're just like, fuck, friendly fire, man. Like friendly fire. But yeah, so that was the same thing. Like in reality, like, you know, like this movie should have been done like 25 minutes in, because once they see the gold, right, and they're walking up with them with the tank and the sniper on him, and then the captain or whatever puts the sniper down, saying not yet, because they want him to pick up all the gold that fell first. And then you're just like, it should have just finished right there. It should have been the snipe to the head, and you can pick up your own gold. You can
pick up your own gold. Go
and head back, right? But yeah, it was just like, I was like, fuck, man. But it just made it, because it's like you said, it was more like oh my god, I'm gonna David Lynch. It was more like a David Lynch style of feature, in which you have you've written out 7 scenes, and then you just want to film these scenes, and then you just got to try to mix and match these scenes together to try to make a feature.
And if you're listening to Scott and going, wait, I've seen this movie and I don't understand the David Lynch reference, you need to go back and watch our Blue Velvet episode, where we talk about David Lynch basically just being like, I want these scenes in a film. I'm just going to use film to show these scenes. The story aspect of it is kind of irrelevant. But go listen to that episode and then come back and finish this episode. And what Scott just said will make a whole lot more sense. So I'm going to use my quote right away is Michael Ordona from the Los Angeles Times. And he says, and I already know people are going to be like, dude, this is an action film. I can't believe you're taking this seriously. But he said, there is far too much suspension of disbelief required to maintain any kind of dramatic stakes. Okay, so let's put an asterisk on that. Yes, this is like Rambo-esque. Actually, this film, the director, when he was writing this, was kind of basing it off First Blood. I would say it's closer to Rambo 2 or 3 or whatever, but I could see where he's going with the original First Blood. And it's actually also based off of a real Finnish hero. So he was a Finnish sniper in the Second World War named Simo Häyhä. He's believed to have killed over 500 enemy soldiers during the Winter War, the highest number of sniper kills in any major war. So because of this, he is regarded as one of the deadliest snipers of all time. So first off, I just want to see that fucking guy's movie. Just go make that guy's movie. Don't even worry about writing a fucking script. Just go get this guy's book, make that movie, That movie's gonna be fucking sick. But so I get it. Like, we're watching an action movie. It's gonna be a bit kind of crazy, and that in itself is not a problem, except that you still want to be able to make it somewhat believable. And so the example I would use is Die Hard. Okay. Die Hard is, regular cop. He gets stuck in a kind of fucked up situation, and he just seems to continue just to like barely survive each interaction, slowly taking down the terrorists. And what I did not like about this is, so Sisu is supposed, Sisu is not his name. Sisu basically means like an unkillable or whatever. It's Adame Korpi, played by Jorma Tomalia. He's supposed to be this like elite Finnish commando that's killed tons of Russians. But at no point do I see him being a good soldier. Like, he does shitty stuff that is not like what a soldier would do. He doesn't use like covering fire. Like, he's just not very good at the soldier stuff. And I would have preferred him to be maybe left for dead, which they do at kind of multiple times, and then slowly stalk back on the Germans, executing them in a brutal manner. Like, less head on. Like, the whole, I'll be honest, when he got in the fucking water and he just kept fucking sucking German soldiers in. Okay, the first one that he kills and he like sucks their air, fine. But then they're sitting in the boat being like, I don't want to go in the water. It's like, come on. Like, look at where your story you want to go. This is and this is a really good example of plot driven versus character driven story, right? Like, they had a plot, they had a direction this story needed to go, and then they make their characters do that stuff, versus the characters are making choices that move the story along. So if you're going to do this, again, John Wick is another example of, so John Wick's super fantastical, right? But I don't want to use the word it's believable, but you can connect the points. This happens, that he gets the guns from the basement, that he kills this guy.
I'm thinking I'm back.
Like, you can understand the progression, where in this, it was just set piece after set piece. And it's unfortunate because this is a fucking cool concept. And for me specifically, and I understand why they would do this in English, I was really hoping that this was going to be in Finnish and in German and just with like English subtitles. I think that would have given it like a weight and a grittiness. It also you would have had to explain why, when the Germans are talking, most likely in German, the women understand what they're saying. Like, Finnish and German are not even fucking close to the same language. So anyway, you feel free to comment.
Yeah. No. Like, I think, that's more
like when you bring the bitches,
marketability.
The bitches. The schlampa. Not the bitches. It's the bitches. Bring the bitches.
Well, that's a good point to end the show on. Like, let's bring Z bitches, not the bitches. But yeah, like, I think because you're comparing it to Grindhouse, and to me, it's not a Grindhouse. Like, this is more.
Would you say it's an exploitation film?
It's like a softcore version of Death Wish.
Okay.
And like, if you go original Death Wish, in which,
like
it's
Charlie Bronson.
Yeah, if you go original 1, 2, 3, maybe 4, because I still don't understand how one man's whole family can get like raped and killed constantly, and him not being the problem. But like, just in terms of where he's choosing to live.
Yeah, maybe move. Try moving.
Yeah. But yeah, like, if you go original, like, it was brutal in its violence, and it was brutal in terms of like what was done to his family and stuff like that. This, I think they could have gone that route as well, but it was more in the subtleties, right? Like, when you first see the truck full of women that they've kidnapped, and you're introduced to the sniper of the Nazis, like, you could tell he literally raped this woman.
Sure. Yeah.
In front of
implied,
him.
Right.
Right. It's an implied, right? But like, why not? Like, it's a rated R film. Like, go the extra mile. Like, make it so. What I'm saying is, make it so brutal that when you get to that end scene, and spoilers, where it's the women capture him and they tie him to the fucking tank
Mm.
and they're just driving the tank, right? Like you want his comeuppance to be tenfold of what the implied thing was that he did to all of them, right? Like they should have shoved like the end of the tank up his ass and rode it all the way, right?
Or shot
Just
him
like,
off of it. Like, if we're gonna
yeah,
be crazy, let's just get full crazy,
yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. Use them as a catapult, like.
And so that actually, from a story structure, again, I feel like it didn't. Once it kind of ramped up, it like ramped up to like whatever an 8, and it stayed at an 8. Like there was no continuous ramping up more, and that's, I think, what makes it feel a bit flat. It's sort of like 0 and then an 8 or a 6 or whatever you want to call it, and you just kind of stay there and you drop out and you drop back up. But because they kind of raise the stakes super fast right at the beginning, there's no way to go anywhere, right? So you're just kind of like watching the same, again, back to what I keep saying, set pieces over and over and over. And I'll be honest, that ending with the fucking plane, that was irritating. Like that was like,
Well, that was your Doctor Strangelove ending.
no, that part's fine. But listen, I don't want to spoil the fucking movie, but I think you know what I'm talking about. Like there's going to be a sequel. There's already a sequel in development. So after you see that plane thing and you're like, what the fuck? Like that was a bit ridiculous for me.
Are you talking about like how he survived it, or
yeah? So
just
the part
how
that
he
I
got
was
on?
the surviving part that was fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, like,
Even Rambo
says...
doesn't survive shit like literally crashing from 10,000 feet like that.
Yeah,
like,
but you know who does do that with makeshift stuff that he can find?
John
Fucking
McClane.
MacGyver. He MacGyvered the shit out of that safety feature. Right?
So
yeah.
So Rotten Tomatoes, this is one of these things that's so wild. Like, and I almost wonder if it's because the critics are people like Anel, like they're genre critics. Because it's got a 94 from the critics and an 88 from the audience. Like in a film like this, I would expect the opposite, right? Where people go in and they're just like, oh, fucking killing, this is amazing. And the critics are like, okay, that was a piece of shit. But the critics are actually rating it higher than the fucking people watching the film, which it shocked me. I was I'm actually shocked. Yeah.
I think that more was in terms of its marketing. And if I'm not mistaken, and this could be like a Mandela effect, but I remember watching the trailer for this when we went to go watch John Wick 4. And I could have sworn at the beginning of it seemed like it had a tie to John Wick, like in terms of the trailer. I don't know if it was from the studio that brought you John Wick or cinematographer, but it just seemed like
or whatever.
Yeah. But it just seemed like, oh, it got the interest. And we talked about this in our best of 2023 episode, in which it was hyped up a lot just before release, right? And I think that got a lot of people that probably wouldn't have watched it into the theaters, especially if how I remember it is right, and seemed to be tied to John Wick. And when you see in which you're like, okay, this is in the John Wick universe, but just in fucking World War II, right? And to me, that was more like that gold was technically gonna be like the relevation that that's the gold that they use at the Continental and all the hitmen, right? Like he's the father of it all. But
maybe I think you're making some connections that don't exist. But just before we keep going, we were just talking about Rotten Tomatoes. Just want to remind you, if you are listening to this, head over to Apple Podcast and give us a 5-star rating. Leave a comment. The comment can be at whatever you want, because we are trying to get on Rotten Tomatoes as critics, because then, of course, I can just quote myself, which is way better than having to quote other people. So make sure you do that. If whether you're liking us or not, please give us that 5-star rating over on Apple Podcast. So I want to talk about budgets here. We've got like a €6 million, roughly $7 million budget. Did 14, so it made its money. I mean, it maybe made a lot of money, maybe a little bit of money, like you said. Like, it depends on how much is in the marketing budget. So there's going to be a sequel. Like they're in development on a sequel on this. Jorma Tomila is going to be coming back. It's going to be written and directed again by Jalmari. Interesting, Jorma is actually Jalmari's brother-in-law. So when you want to talk about Nepo, it's like, hey, you married my sister. Now you got to put me in all of your movies, because he was in his he was in the director's film Rare Exports, A Christmas Tale, and Big Game, the two biggest films. And actually, Big Game had Samuel L. Jackson in it. So
Now, what was I gonna say? Like in terms of like the performances, like the lead, would you say Jorma? Is that how we say
yeah, it's Jorma Tomalia.
Yeah. Like I think he 100% is a student of that Benicio del Toro thing that you're talking about, where he just literally emoted everything based off of his facial expressions. And it wasn't until like literally the end of the movie that I realized that was the first time you actually heard him fucking talk. So in terms of that, like he did a great job, in which it was like he captivated in terms of the attention there. Like, but in terms of, I don't know where I was going with this. I apologize, because you're distracting me with your.
Oh. Hello.
Because you fucking fell off your fucking train of track, or what?
Yeah. No, I'm just staring at you like.
Just start fucking
doing?
rambling on.
No. Like in terms of his performance, like, didn't you think it was a good performance? And like the fact that he didn't actually say a word until the very fucking end of the movie.
Oh, listen, I think he did great. Like yeah. I think all the actors did fine. So the SS officer, the Unterscharführer, whatever he is Axel Henny. He's actually Norwegian. He's not German. He was in The Martian. And then the lead kind of female is Mimosa Willimano. She played Enio. She was in Headfirst and Lake Bodom. Lake Bodom actually is a Finnish slasher film that has a 91% from the critics, 43% audience score. But I might check that out, because she won a bunch of awards for that film. So, I mean, like I said, I think they brought in good actors, and like I said, I just think that the story, again, the script needed work. Like this film does look very nice. Like the cinematography is well done. Like I said, the set pieces are well put together. The DOP on this is Kajal Laragros. I'm sorry, man. I definitely fucked your name up. Like I said, it looks really nice. It's got some script problems. I think it's got some editing problems. It doesn't have an acting problem though. Like,
yeah, I would agree with that. 100%. Yeah. So
one of the things, hold on, before we get it, one of the things that was interesting, because when I was first watching this, I was like, the Germans were never in Finland. Like the Finnish were fighting the Soviets. But there's actually, doing my research for this to verify it, so it was part of the Lapland War. So from September to November, like a really short period in 1944, Finland's most northern region was in conflict between them and the Germans. The Germans had been their allies up until that point, fighting against the Russians. But when the Finnish signed the Moscow armistice, the Russians were like, all right, if we're going to have this armistice, you got to get rid of the fucking Germans. And for the most part, it went smoothly, but the Germans still did, like, so the scorched earth, like burning everything down and mining the shit out of everything, that really happened. So I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. It's like a piece of World War II history that I was totally unaware of that is accurate. So, and I mean, they are Finnish, and so they would know that part of the war much better than the rest of us who kind of focus on stuff like Juno Beach or the Normandy landing in general, et cetera, or the Battle of the Pacific if you're in the United States.
And there's our new segment, History with Chris.
Chris on History. Chris Street. We call it Chris Street.
Chris Street.
Welcome to our.
Be like, how accurate are these accurate movies?
So our producer actually sent us a note. So John Wick 1 was made for 30 million, and this is made for 7. So do you think that some of the challenges that we're talking about are like budgetary?
Well, it's not just budgetary. Some of the challenges is you're budgeting based on what you think your movie would make as well, right? Because this is hard R. Hard R movies very rarely nowadays make their money back, right? Like, because you're limiting 3/4 of the audience, right? And that's why, like,
unless you're Joker and you make $1 billion fucking dollars.
yeah, but that's the thing.
But that's IP. Some of that was IP, right? So
yeah, it's IP, but it's also, it's rare. Like you think in terms of R-rated movies, like off the top of my head, the ones that did well, you got Joker, but that was 50 million. Like they didn't budget to thinking it was going to make as much as it did make. You got Deadpool as well. That was hard R. T2, right? But that was 90s and everything was fucking rated R back then. But that's the thing, right? Like, it's called the movie business for a reason, because it is a business and people want to make money. So like in terms of like a lot of people are critiquing, let's say, the Five Nights at Freddy movie, right? Made a shit ton of money, but it was PG, not as scary as people were probably hoping. But you got to look at the demographic, right? Like that whole video game, it's kids like my son and my daughter that are 13 and under that play that fucking game. So they're the ones
that was based on a video game.
Yeah.
Oh,
so that they're the ones that would, be driving that IP to make the movie. So that's why it's PG-13. So the freaking people that play the games can go watch it, right? Like, so everybody that's down on it because it's not as violent as or scary as people thinking, it's like, come on, people, like think of who these people are actually marketing the shit for.
And that's a good point, because like Terrifier 2 was made for very little money and surprisingly made a shit ton of money. But no one's like, you're right, you're not counting on that. Like it's very different. If you want to make more money, do not make an R-rated film. Like the odds of making a shit ton of money on an R-rated film are very narrow. Again, unless you are doing like an IP, like, but I mean, so let's look like Deadpool IP, Joker IP. Like they already have a built-in fan base that came out for that, right? So
yeah, and that's the thing. Like in terms of Joker, think of the sequel, right? Like, well, we never discussed it in terms of what we're looking forward to in 2024, but I keep on thinking about it. Like, think of the sequel. It's now gonna be a rated R IP musical.
Yeah,
right?
that's gonna be that is either gonna be really good or it's gonna be fucking awful, and it's gonna.
But that's the thing. Like the balls on Todd Phillips to be like, all right, I fucking made a rated R movie, like, and that made a shit ton of money. Now I'm gonna make a fucking sequel, and it's gonna be a fucking musical. We're gonna have more Joker dancing down steps, right? Right, but that's the thing. Like to me, it's stuff like that kind of drive this, right? Like fucking making an R-rated fucking movie about a guy killing Nazis violently. To me, it's a small demographic that'll go to watch it, but I think it was marketed right, it was tagged right, and that's what kind of drove people to see it. And in reality, like if it was a $7 million budget, like it really only needed 1 or 2 weekends. Like I think they're more relying on word of mouth to give it legs to make up the budget and make money on it. And that was the thing, it was buzzed correctly, and that's what it did, right? So
and I'd also like to, I mean, I wish we could get a hold of these numbers. Like I'd like to know what the stream, because I watched it on either Crave or Amazon, but it's available both those places. So I'd love to know how much they got for the licensing fee, right? Because that's going to be just an upfront cash payment, quite possibly. And then whatever their streams are at, so or rentals. Like there's a whole other economic world that it's much harder to get the data on. So the fact that this thing, let's say that it did have double the marketing budget. I don't think it did. I think it probably made money right off the hop. But you're already back. You're back to zero. And then everything else after that is white meat on like the director really only has like 2 features that we already talked about and some shorts and did some commercials. He's from Finland. Like this film is going to be very good for this man's career. It'll be interesting to see what the budget on Sisu 2 is going to be, because, a lot of there was a lot of hype around this film. Like I said, like people in the genre space really enjoyed it. And they're probably not really enjoying the fact that I didn't like it as much and thought that it could have been done better.
Because, the whole world revolves around Chris, that if he doesn't like something, everybody else is going to be sitting in the corner being like, oh man, why doesn't he like what I like?
What would you, is there anything that you think that right off the top of your head you could do to make this film better? And
I do agree.
When you do that, who do you recommend this to, and do you recommend it?
Yeah, like I said, like it's not a bad movie, but there are parts that do feel a little stretched out or a little thin, that they're just trying to bump up the runtime, right? And I don't know if it's just because they need a certain amount of money or a certain amount of length to make it a theatrical release. Like in terms of that business end, I have no idea. That's more your cup of tea, but like it's a fine movie, right? But it's not one that I don't think you're going to rewatch. Like this isn't going to be a rotation film. I think this is going to be the kind of old day, you're cleaning the house and you just have the TV on and it's on fucking HBO, and you see it on, or Cinemax, so you're like, oh, you just leave it on, start vacuuming, look over, then boom, Nazi knife to the head, pick to the chin, and you're like, oh, okay, and then continue on, right?
The type of thing we used to watch on like a Sunday afternoon or something like that, on like this wouldn't be on the Pear Tree, what was it called, not Pear Tree or Peach Tree or stuff like that, like the movie channels that back in the day on cable.
The movie channel?
Well, that one, there were multiple movie channels. Yes, one was called the movie channel. Anyway, listen, if you like action films, check it out. It's especially if you already have a service don't rent it. Watch it on one of your services that actually has it. It'll be okay, but don't go into it with high expectations. I did, because you'll be disappointed. Just listen to my words, let them soothe you, and yeah, man, you get to watch some Nazis get killed. So that's kind of cool.
And that is our wrap for the day. Please like and subscribe to this podcast. Tell your friends. If you want to get a hold of us, reach us at the www.howdyoulikethatmovie.com.
I almost picture that conversation like they're at his house, they're just like chilling. Keanu's like, so what are you guys working on? They're like, oh, we got the script, we're gonna get this old guy. Oh, cool. I'd love to do that. Roll. And just like, oh, okay, yeah, sure, man. Yeah, fuck, that'd be amazing. I love action movies.
Nah, man, that's the thing. You make fun of them, but
I love them. No, I love them. I love them.
I was gonna say I know. But the more I read about him, and the more I see, like, he literally might be like the nicest fucker. Like, I'm pretty sure, just based on everything I said, if we sent out like an email to this guy, like, do you want to come on our PN of a show, he'd be like, sure, man. Well,
it's like, I happen to be back home in Toronto anyway.
Yeah. Well, maybe not after that fucking question.
Listen, Dolly Parton, Keanu Reeves, whether you believe in them or not, they're both angels.
Way to save it.
Production by Rod Shaver, Vader Monkey Productions.